The world of modelling. A world as secretive as it is glamorous. A world that from the outside appears like the golden gauntlet, untouchable and unstoppable. But do you know what the real world of modelling is like? Do you have what it actually takes? Well, hi, I'm James. I've been a model for 5 years and I've been lucky enough to work with some of the best brands in fashion. And today I'm going to be unearthing absolutely everything that you need to know about modelling. So I think the number one thing that I really want to start with here is that absolutely anybody can be a model. I think the real question is, after you've watched this video, will you still actually want to be? In this video, I'll be covering how you get signed, the day-to-day logistics, then we'll be moving into the slightly more interesting stuff like the best parts, some of the really hard truths. We'll be answering some frequently asked questions. And finally, we'll have some tips from some other models that you may potentially recognize. So firstly, what actually is a model? Well, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's simply a person who wears clothes so that they can be photographed or shown to possible buyers. And in truth, without all the glamour and all the stuff that you see on social media, that is all that it is. You are simply a coat hanger that people put clothes on to sell clothes to other people, and it is nothing more than that. So now that we've established that, why is it that you might even consider being a model in the first place? Well, the benefits, to be honest, are kind of endless, and we'll start with some of the bigger ones, or some of the ones that I prefer. Number one, you are self-employed, which means that you run your own calendar. It means that you can travel where you want, when you want. You can do literally what you want. If you don't want to work, you don't have to. Obviously, when you're required to be on set, you've got to be on set. I mean, it's not that flexible, but in a sense, it is still flexible because you are your own business. You are representing yourself. Secondly, and kind of building off that idea of traveling everywhere, there is so many opportunities to travel within the world of modeling. I personally have been to Germany, Italy, Spain, New York, all for work, all for shoots, all paid for. And I can tell you right now, it is the most incredible experience ever. Number three, and this is something that we'll kind of cover a little bit later on, but you can earn a lot of money, and I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on can because that is something that, as I said, we will discuss later. But I know models who earn upwards of 6 figures a year, and I've heard of jobs where you can earn 6 figures for literally 3 or 4 days work. Like it can be life-changing amounts of money. Number four, keeping it nice and brief, you can get to meet some really cool, interesting people. You get to meet some of the greatest creatives that the world has to offer, or your city or town has to offer, and yeah, it can be really cool. Number five, the agencies that you sign to often get sent really cool opportunities, like for example, going to premieres or really cool parties just because they want people from the agency to be seen there, and you can end up in rooms with some people that you would just never even expect to meet. So you hear all that and you go, you know, I like the sound of that, and you know, in fairness, who wouldn't? I mean, some of those opportunities are kind of insane. How do you get started? This is probably my number one most asked question that I get asked literally all the time. So let me just kind of run you through the basics of it. Now, there's actually a couple of different ways on how to actually get signed, and these may benefit different people because, like, well, it depends on how much effort you actually want to put into getting actually signed. So to begin with, you've got walk-ins. You've then got using things such as agency hashtags on social media, and this is actually how I got signed, weirdly, before I even had social media. You've then got things like being scouted on the street, and finally, and probably, well, definitely the most effective way of getting signed is simply just by applying online. Honestly, it is so simple. They make it so easy for you to do. Pretty much you just need to get your nan, your mum, your dad, whatever, to take a couple of headshots of you. I'll throw a couple of up on screen. Make sure you're wearing plain clothes, so like a plain white t-shirt or a black t-shirt or a vest. You need to have it on a clear background with no makeup. I mean, you know, if you've got potentially a couple of blemishes, maybe you can apply a little bit of concealer. I occasionally do that. And then obviously, you know, obvious things such as like don't use filters, like don't slap any like Snapchat filter over the top. And also make sure you take them in daylight. If you're in the dark, no one can see you. They need to be able to see your face. They need to be able to see if they could envision you wearing the clothes that the brands have. You know, that's literally all that it is. But yeah, the key point there is they don't need to be professional. They just simply need to see what you look like. Step number two, go on models.com and put in your location, or put in the location of your nearest city in the agency section and press enter. And from there, you will have a whole host of agencies that are all available within your territory, and go on their websites and then send those digitals into the agencies alongside some of your measurements, because they'll ask for some like basic measurements like how tall are you, for example. And then step number 3, it's the waiting part. I mean, agencies take between 1 hour and 10 days. Sometimes agencies don't even bother replying. Sometimes it's just not the right fit, and sometimes, they just don't have enough space. So don't take it personally, just move on to the next. And if you get rejected by all of them, just apply again in 6 months' time, because by then they'll have had a new agent come in. Like, these industries move really quickly, and the look that they're after changes also very quickly. Alternatively, something else, you might want to consider, maybe you're like, oh, well, my mum takes dreadful photos of me. Well, there's also an alternative of doing a walk-in, and basically on models.com, like I said, put in your location and find out what agencies accept walk-ins and when they accept walk-ins. And when they do accept walk-ins, go in, say hi and introduce yourself, and maybe they'll take you, maybe they won't. Anyways, now that you're signed, what is some general information that you should know about modeling? Now, the first one is something that I hadn't even considered when I started modeling, and that is that there are several different types. To begin with, you have your fitness models, and these guys do sort of like your gym and your fitness bits. You then have your commercial models, these guys that tend to work with sort of maybe high street brands, and they tend to do like the e-com jobs, which are the jobs that you see when you're scrolling on your phone looking to buy clothes. You then have editorial models who do magazines, and then finally you have your runway models, which, well, I'm assuming you've seen. They walk the runway. And one thing that I do want to know, by the way, is that just because you fit into one category, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't fit into other categories. Like, just because you do editorial doesn't mean you can't do runway. Like, they normally mesh into each other. It's a blend. It's a blend. From that, what type of work can you book, and for how much? Now, when you first start, you will inevitably have to do test shoots. These are things that you either pay for or that are done for free. And these are simply with the one goal in mind, which is building out your book. This right here was my first book at Milk when I was 18. And this is my current book and my current agency at Nevs. And as you can see, it's kind of just a portfolio of all the work that you've done in order to book work. Think of it as kind of like your CV as a model, and kind of by doing these test shoots, you're just building up your CV in order to get better work from bigger companies, just like you would do getting work experience when you're applying for a job. And it's simply in mind to just be able to show clients to be like, yeah, this is what he looks like on camera. I think he'd be able to do a good job for you. Next up, and once you've got that, you'll move on to like actual paid work, of which the most common form is something called e-com, and you're normally paid between £500 and £1,500 per day of work. It tends to be how like 99.9% of models start their career as a model, and it's how you pay your bills, to be honest, because it's good work, it's regular work. Your next step up from e-com would be your campaign, and these are your things like your billboards, your video content, and it pays really, really well. You can be paid anything from like £2,000 all the way up to, I don't know, any infinity really, 6 figures to be honest. And the amount that you get paid on is simply based on who the brand is, what the usage is, so how much like they're basically using it in wider society, how much other people are going to see it, and then what it's actually being used for. Is it just a video on Instagram, or is it a photo that's going to be slapped on the side of every single bus in London? Then there's editorial. These are for magazines, and they are paid zilch. Like, you will never earn a penny. You could be on the front of Vogue, you will not get paid for any of it. You simply do it for the honor and for the ability to build your book. Like, for example, this is me in Arena Om, and it's just another opportunity to show clients what you can do, because they're normally much more exciting and much more fun shoots, and you get to wear really quite cool clothes for it. And finally, the one that everyone seems to care about, runway. Now, to be honest, runway, when you first get started, you're probably looking at about £250 a show, but obviously as you build your reputation, you can get paid more and more. And like, I know boys that have walked for £5,000 or £10,000, or the money can grow exponentially, but when you first start, yeah, it's not going to be for a lot, so just be prepared for that. But one other thing that I will comment on is that walking a runway is incredibly prestigious, and it is normally the way that models build their career. Next up, how does an agency even work? Well, you'd think it'd be really simple, but it's actually not. Pretty much when you sign for an agency, you can only sign for one agency per territory. What is a territory? Well, a territory is pretty much a country or a city. If you sign for an agency in London, you will only be able to sign for that agency in the UK. It's a pretty simple thing for one reason, which is that you don't want multiple agencies trying to put you up for multiple different jobs. It gets very confusing for everyone. So yeah, you can only be represented by one agency in one territory. Next, and within that, the first agency you sign for will act as your mother agent, and it should be their responsibility to basically manage and look after your career. Within this, it should be things like trying to get you signed within other territories once you start to grow and expand your portfolio. For example, my mother agent was originally in Germany, and then I got signed in England after. Next, and another thing that I had literally no idea about when I started, is that your agency needs to be keeping on top of the work that you are doing. Their job should be to manage your career as much as it is to get you work. And sometimes things that you have to consider, if you take a job for Shein or Boohoo, you are never going to book a job for Gucci, because they just don't work. Your face has been associated with a brand that Gucci wouldn't even consider, So yeah, just keep that in mind when you are booking work, because I have seen it before, and it can massively limit any career prospects that you have. On the flip side of that though, that's also not to say that you shouldn't do it. Money's money, and those brands normally pay better because of the reason that I just mentioned. And sorry to rip the band-aid off on this, because everyone seems to think that this is the case, but no one is going to teach you to pose. It's not a thing. No one will ever step in front of you and be like, oh, this is how you should do this. Well, it's kind of a lie. There are some agencies that I think Elite and Storm might offer beginner models classes, but a lot of agencies don't. They will literally just send you out on jobs and be like, go and do it. So yeah, get practicing in that mirror. It's important. And finally, another one that again people seem to get confused about, how getting paid actually works. Now again, this kind of depends. For example, my agency will forward me the money, so if I book a modeling job, they will normally pay me between 5 and 10 days after. However, the industry standard is 3 months, so if you book that first modeling job, don't go and spend it all at once, because that money's not coming anytime soon. I promise you, it can be a nightmare. Anyways, look, we've done all the frilly bits, we've done all the niceties. Now it's time for some actual hard truths that, well, a lot of people don't really ever want to discuss. Now look, as I said at the start, anyone can be a model, and I stand by that, but less than a handful of people can actually be models. And let me explain to you what I mean by that really quickly. In truth, although I started with the fact that, you earn all this money, the reality is the average model makes literally no money, no money. I know boys that walk Louis Vuitton season in, season out, and still have to work a second job at their local corner shop to make ends meet, to even be able to afford rent, or be able to even afford to go out to the castings for these shows. To be honest, as a guy, it's different to being a girl. Girls earn on average 3 times more than guys in the modeling industry. If you turn up for a day of ecom, there's a good chance that the girl will be being paid a lot more than you for being there. And that's just the reality of the industry. But as a guy within the industry itself, I would say globally, there are probably less than 250 male models who are making enough to live very comfortably and be able to say that they're a model without a second job. Anyways, next up, and just keeping the flow and the joy going. If you're insecure, best believe you're about to be a million times more insecure. Before modeling, I hadn't ever really considered how I looked. It was not something that I ever even thought about. Now, yeah, it's a different story. At the end of the day, the blunt truth of it is, whether you book work or not is simply based on how you look and nothing more. And on top of that, how you look is constantly under scrutiny because, well, people are analyzing your face the whole time. It's just simply to be like, oh, does this fit for my brand? And then to top it all off, just to put the cherry on top of the cake, you are surrounded by some of the best looking people on planet Earth. You will see people book work because of very specific reasons that you can't compete with because that's not you. You best believe that at some point you will be told that your body isn't quite right for whatever reason, for a reason that you can't even begin to fathom. And that is just how it is. That's just how the industry works. And you might be like, oh, but I heard the industry is getting so much better. We're seeing all this and this and this. They don't care. They don't care. In the end of the day, as I kind of brought it back to the start of the video, you are simply a clothing hanger to fit those clothes, and if you don't fit those clothes, they'll find someone else that does. And I know that sounds tough, but if you find that tough to hear, you're just gonna have to go and find another career because that's the raw truth. And building off of that, again, a truth that not many people like to speak about, eating disorders, they're rife. And you might be like, oh, well, that's only girls. I promise you it's guys too. And it's awful. It's really awful. And you might think it doesn't happen to you. There's a good chance that it might. Next up, just keeping it going. Job security. Well, there's none. There is no job security. You don't know when your next job is coming in. Nothing in modeling is guaranteed. So if you start, go in with no expectations. Next, and one that's maybe, slightly less hard-hitting, thankfully, you're just gonna have to wear what you're given. That's your job. So you might not like the clothes. Well, get on with it. Following it up, dating life, really hard. Your work, as I said, will take you all over the world for many months of the year. If you're a runway model, for example, you'll be away for 4 months a year straight off the bat. That's not even before you then start including anything else that might be happening. And to top it off, you know, just with the final nail in the coffin, you don't even get to keep the clothes. All of the clothes that you model, they're sent back to the brand. I mean, as I said at the start, yes, there is some free stuff, but quite often it's just socks. And sometimes you don't even get to keep the socks. Quite often they'll just take the socks back. I know that sounds tough, and it is tough. It is the reality of it. But at the core of it, as I just said, that is kind of what the industry is. And there's no real escaping that at the end of the day. Everyone will experience at least one of those things that I just mentioned at some point. Maybe not all together, maybe not all at the same time, but you will experience some of it. It is almost a guarantee. And if you don't like it, well, all I can really advise is that, well, find a more friendly career, to be honest. I think that's probably the easiest solution to any of that. We've done all the bad stuff, we're back in my room. Let's talk frequently asked questions. First things first, do you have to be super tall? Now, the honest answer is, it kind of depends. For certain types of modeling, there are some guidelines, and many agencies won't take you if you don't fit into those, which is generally, are you over 6 foot as a guy? Are you over like 5'7", 5'8" as a girl? You know, Ivan Mock was 5'9" as a guy. So yeah, you know, there's always exceptions to these rules. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, there are so many different types of modeling that don't necessarily require you to be tall at all. Swimwear, for example, doesn't require you to be tall. Certain gym things definitely don't. So it kind of depends on what it is that you're required for. Next, is it creepy, or are there any creeps within the industry? In reality, there's always going to be bad eggs in whatever industry you're in. It's kind of well known within the industry who are the kind of the no-goes. But my general rule of thumb is have a good agent, be wary, and you never have to do anything that you don't want to do. You know, if you're ever in a situation that you feel is uncomfortable, or you feel like you're working with someone who's creepy, call your agent, tell them you're not comfortable with it, and either leave or they can sort something out for you where the situation can be resolved. 3, can you push yourself for more work, or is it always the agency? Now, from my experience, the agency you're actually signed at can make a huge difference, especially the agent. You got to remember that it's really an industry of opinions, so having an agent that's there in your corner, no matter what, always pushing for you, always fighting for you, can really, yeah, it changes things. So yeah, always make sure that you're communicating with them as quickly as possible and as frequently as possible, keeping them updated on things that you're doing in your own life. And then also make sure you go to every casting, make sure you submit every sort of self-tape that you're asked for, and be nice, you know? Like, at the end of the day, it's just an industry of people trying to do their job. 4, and this is one that I see all the time, how do you know if your agency is legit? I think generally when an agency reaches out to you, just do your due diligence, see what they're saying, see what they're doing. There are some agencies that aren't on models.com, but generally have a look on there. And then after that, if they ask you for money, that is a major red flag. They should never ask you for money. I know in America it's a little bit different, but in the UK they should never ask you for money. And you know, worst comes worst, if you're still really not sure after all of that, just reach out to some models on the board. You know, just reach out to some of the models and go, you know, is this legit? How are you finding it? How are you finding the agents? And yeah, just have a conversation. It can never do anyone any harm. Next, best age to start. In reality, there's no real way to answer this. There is no right age. The general rule of thumb is you can't be a model without like your parental consent under the age of 18, and rightly so. Most guys get into it around 17, 18. Girls, it tends to be younger. Following that up, can you model with bad skin? The answer is yes, but it's a lot harder, and it depends on what market that you are working in. I had a clause in my first contract that basically stipulated that if I got bad skin, they could drop me. That was very clear. It was maybe, I don't know why, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what number it was, but it was in the contract. Next, do they force you to take photos without clothes on? The best answer to this one is that, again, you stipulate what you are comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with. If there's a shoot that they're like, we need you to, you know, have your top off, and you're like, I don't fancy having my top off, well, don't do it. You know, simple as, they'll find someone else to do it. So never feel pressured to do any work, and there's always another job in the end of the day, so don't stress about it. Number 8, how does the process of booking a job actually work? It's very straightforward, to be honest. Pretty much a brand will be like, right, we have a shoot for X and we are looking for this, this and this. They will then send that brief out to agencies. The agencies will then look at their board and go, okay, well, we've got this, this and this that fits that. Are you interested? From here, you might be asked to do a casting, and this casting can be online or in person, and that's just when you go to meet the client and they maybe try the clothes on you to see if they actually suit you. Or potentially they might even ask for a self-tape, which is not necessarily uncommon. They can also book you direct. You might not have to do any of that. They might just go, yep, we want James for this. on this date. But yeah, from here, once they've gone, yeah, we're kind of interested in James, they'll option you for the job, where you're then required to book out that date in your calendar, and then you will then get confirmed. You can be dropped from the job at any point. You can be optioned and dropped, you can be confirmed and dropped. Number 9, how much do you earn? I know technically we covered this earlier in the video, but I wanted to give you like a more frank answer. And the reality is, I would argue that most models don't make minimum wage. Next, do you have to be skinny? Models can be any shape, any size. I think we're seeing that more and more reflected now in the industry, so definitely not. How to have a photo portfolio? Well, your agency will sort that for you. There's a huge scam that goes around on the internet where they're like, pay £800 to sort your portfolio and you'll be signed as a model. It's not the case. Your agency will sort out all of that for you after you're signed. Following that, a quite important one, how to find the right agency. At the start of your career, I don't think it really matters. I think the most crucial thing is just finding an agent that you actually get on with. To be honest, most agencies all have the same contacts. They're all working within the same pool. They've all got similar experience. You just want an agent who works hard, looks out for you, you get on well with. Another common conception that floats around online is, does having a social presence help you book jobs? The answer is yes and no. It works both ways. It really just kind of depends on what the client wants. Some clients want models who have a social presence so that their work can reach more people. Most clients don't want models that have a social presence because they just want their brand to be attributed to what it is rather than the model that they booked. Second to last, does it affect you mentally? If you're going to do this, you are going to have thick skin. There is no beating around the bush with it. You are going to have to be tough. This job will make you question absolutely everything there is about yourself. So make sure you know what you're signing up to and make sure you're prepared for that when you do eventually get to that point. And finally, do they tell you what to eat? No, I've never had a model agent tell me what to eat. I'm sure there are scenarios where it has occurred just from things that I've heard in the general field, but I would say on the whole, absolutely not. And finally, the bit that you may or may not have all been waiting for, some tips from some other models. First up is Ahmed. Ahmed is probably the most successful model that I know that you may or may not have heard of, to be honest. He's the face of Tom Ford. He walks literally every show for every single brand. He's been an in-house model for Fendi. I'm probably not even doing his career even the slightest bit of justice, to be honest. Like, this guy is a serious big dog and also one of the nicest people that I've ever had the pleasure of coming across. He actually sent a voice note.
The best advice I could give is probably authenticity and, like, you know, show up to the castings in your own clothes. Don't really try and kiss ass for anyone, and I feel like your personality and your attitude is probably going to be the easiest thing or the easiest way for you to get booked.
I fully back that, and that, as I say, is coming from someone who probably isn't far big a supermodel, to be fair. The guy kills it. Next up, we have Luke Pearson, another model who I'm definitely not going to do their career justice. This guy walks Casa all the time. He walked Dolce & Gabbana recently, and he's an in-house model for Burberry. And his advice was simply just be confident, even if it's just the 2 minutes of the casting or the whole day that you're on the shoot. Make sure they only see the best version of yourself. Following that up, we have everyone's favorite model and probably one of my favorite human beings that I've ever had the pleasure of coming across. He definitely needs no introduction. I mean, the guy, if you haven't seen his work yet, I mean, you definitely will be soon. I mean, he is literally on his way to becoming a supermodel. Busy guy, but his advice was learn how to use social media in ways that will add to your modeling career. Short, sweet, and simple. Next up, we have James Yates, who, out of all of the people that I know within the modeling industry, he's probably been doing it the longest. Incredibly well-established model. Yeah, he's very recently walked for Giorgio Armani, and yeah, let the clip roll.
If I had to offer one piece of advice for people starting out in the modeling or fashion industry, it would be stay persistent and don't get too caught up on bad pictures. They only need a few good ones from the day. You're going to take plenty of bad photos. Don't worry too much about those. Focus on the good ones.
And finally, and I'm sure we'd have it no other way, to finish off, Kit.
My biggest piece of advice for someone getting into the modeling industry is that comparison is the thief of joy. There are obviously going to be models who you aspire to have similar careers to, and unfortunately 9 times out of 10, it is unlikely that that is going to be the case. So enjoy your journey and take time to be proud and appreciate what you've done.
And finally, my tip, which in fairness might not hold as much weight because, well, my career has been far less successful than some of the other boys that are on this list. But yeah, I just say have fun. The whole experience goes very, very quickly. There are very, very few models who stick around for longer than 2 or 3 years. And if you are sticking around longer than that, you're pretty bloody good. Yeah, anyways, if you do get signed, best of luck. It really is an incredible experience, and I hope it's everything that you ever want it to be. And if you don't get the opportunity, don't worry. Come back in 6 months' time, give it another go. The industry changes so quickly. Beauty standards change even quicker. So, you know, take it with a pinch of salt, and worst comes to worst, start your own clothing brand and put yourself as the model. That's always an alternative. Yeah, if you have any further questions, please feel free to let me know down below. I've got a new camera, so I hope you enjoyed that too. And yeah, as always, please make sure you like, subscribe, check out my other videos, and yeah, have a lovely day.